Hey Juan,
Shannon.
I'm so excited for this conversation today. I'll begin by saying I'm Shannon Weber. I'm a coach, an author, a facilitator. I'm based in San Francisco on the unceded territories of the Ohlone people. And I'm going to be in conversation today with my collaborator at Emory University, sharing a little bit about some of the frameworks that help us to stay grounded in challenging times. So, Juan, would you introduce yourself?
Yes, fantastic. My name is Juan Leon. I'm global health faculty at the School of Public Health at Emory University. And for the past 20 years, I've been working on reducing global foodborne outbreaks. Specifically, if you like salads, I focus on fruits and vegetables specifically, and making sure that the fruits and vegetables that you eat, you don't get sick from. The other aspect of my work is I also work on strengthening our public health workforce because I believe, and as Shannon does as well, that the work that we all do in public health is so critical. Thank you, Shannon.
Yes. Thank you for keeping our fruits and vegetables safe. So
Yes.
important. So important. So, Juan, I was so delighted about, well, it's almost been a year, if I'm honest, to get this surprise email from you introducing yourself and saying that you'd been referred to me by a mutual colleague of ours at Emory, and introducing the idea of this course for your best public health life that you wanted to lead at Emory. So, can you share a little bit about that, where that came from, and how you sought to have a collaboration?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that great question. So, as many important decisions in our lives, there's so many different elements and reasons for why we do certain things, and many other fears and anxieties that hold us back from doing some of those dreams, that this was kind of an amalgamation of all of that. So, for example, many years ago, I was sitting in my office late at night, and I was just realizing how tired, exhausted, burnt out I was. And the same thing happened the next day, and I was kind of dreading coming into work again the next day. And I asked myself, why? This is my dream job. I've been fighting so hard to get here. And I love what I do, and I love working with the students. And so, long story short, I ended up working with a career coach with advice from colleagues to identify the best one. And my work with her made me realize that there were a lot of beliefs, mindsets, habits, practices that I needed to transform and take on that ultimately ended up re-energizing my work and bringing back a lot of the joy that I had in my own way, obviously. Each of us has our own journey. And I also looked around and I saw, wow, my colleagues are going through the same thing that I'm going through.
Mhm.
So I took a couple of people under my wing. I do a lot of this for the students, the master's students, doctoral students, postdoctoral fellows, etc. But I chose to do this for faculty specifically. And a lot of the faculty came back to me and says, "Oh my gosh, Juan, like my life is better. Like I have so much more joy now, etc." And so, like we do in public health, we always think about scale. So great, I help these individual faculty and we build community, but now how can we make this bigger? And out of that came that desire to create this course as a step towards scaling up this habits, these practices, these mindsets, and thinking about what comes next. So that was kind of the first stage. If you'd like, I'd like to tell you a little bit about why I reached out to you or whatever else you would like me
Yeah,
to.
that'd be great.
Okay. So that was an exciting part of the journey too, because once I made that decision, like, okay, I need to scale this up and create this course, then of course all the fear kicks in. It's like, who am I to teach a course like this? Like, what do I want to teach it about? And um, even taking that first step of just writing a concept note and sending it out to trusted colleagues to find out what it was about was hard. And later on, if you give me permission, I'd love to share a tool I use to kind of get past that obstacle of
Yeah.
almost sabotaging yourself. But during that time, I was thinking, okay, if I do this course, how would it look like? And I realized public health is all about community and working with other people. And I said, I need a partner, somebody that I can work with, that I can learn from, that I can share ideas back and forth, that will share ideas back and forth with me, that will challenge me in different ways, that I will grow together. And I was so excited. So I reached out to you as one of those amazing individuals that I thought would be a great colleague and fit for this course. And so that's how it happened. So now I'm curious about you. When you received my email just out of the blue, what did you think? And what was your response? And why did you decide to say yes ultimately?
Yeah, I mean, well, for one, it was a really well written email. I mean, listen, it was really well organized about introducing who you were and linking out to some of your thoughts. Because, as somebody, yeah, who receives various requests, sometimes things come in and they're just not going to be a good fit. But I'm like, oh, this is so well thought out. I have to dig in more to see who this person is and what they're about, and let's have a call. So that would be for starters. And what interested me was our really different backgrounds, but how we were both thinking about and had this commitment to this robust public health workforce. And I'd come to it. I love public health. I love the people in it. I love the work. I love the possibility of what can happen. And when we have public health that works. And as there were increasing challenges facing public health, which has only ramped up, which have only increased and gotten more complex, I began to realize like understanding the tools of public health and how to do the work was one thing, and or the work was one thing, and the other thing was how to do the work. So I became increasingly interested in that in-between space and the relationships and the structures that allow people to do the work that they're trained on or that they have their expertise. And this is oftentimes work that gets relegated as a nice to have, or we'll do that when we get to this point, when we have some space. And the reality is, in most of our personal lives, and certainly in our professional lives, we don't get there. Life happens, public health happens. And so I had been looking for what are all the ways we can embed these small actionable steps? Is it through trainings, retreats, workshops? I wrote a book, content online. Like, what are really all the ways that can help make how we do the work better so we can really be good to each other in it? And so by the way, I've mentioned to you before, but it's always worth saying, like, this has been such a generative collaboration for me working with you. Like, I have learned so much from you. And I think that's the beauty of what has come through this course, is imagining what would it be like to have a super diverse group of public health professionals in the room as the body of, or the community of public health people that are taking us this forward, and how might we resource ourselves to do that work well together.
I love that, Shannon. And I wanted to underline a couple of words that you said, kind of the bridges aspect of it. I think social work and public health do this very well in terms of being bridges to each other and across disciplines, across people, creating partnerships. And that's such a richness of what we do. Uh, so, so I would love to, if you could share a little bit about what this course is about and your ideas and introduce it.
Yes. So the course is called Your Best Public Health Life, which is a magical thing to think about in these times, no doubt. And in the course, we really focused on three things: purpose, well being, and impact, and how these are related. And again, I think a lot of times in the traditional sense, we spend a lot of time in public health thinking about what impact might be. But I know from my work with so many individuals, unless we can connect that back to our own personal purpose and take care of our well being, we're never going to get to that impact. And our purpose might change, and the impact we want to make might change. And we want that to happen. Like, hopefully, we have very long public health careers, and we might do different things at different times. And so, what are these frameworks that can help us as we change and adapt, just as the field of public health changes and adapts?
Love it. That was great.
How about for you? What is your just what, like, do you have a different way of thinking about it, or how you capture it when you're talking about it with folks?
Ultimately, I think you captured it well. These three elements are important, and in different parts of our work and life, they may come to be bigger or smaller. But you do need all of them to be a well-rounded, successful public health implementer that has impact. But ultimately, the health that we want others to have around us in population level, we also, in a sense, need to be that example. So I agree with everything that you said, Shannon.
Oh, I like how you also bring that piece in, is like, also, how are we an embodiment of the public health we're teaching to other people, which is a really great point. And when might we be an oxymoron and not that, which can also happen because we're
I
human.
agree.
Being human after all is not easy.
I agree with you.
Juan, you mentioned earlier, and I'd love to tap into this because you, to me, are a fountain of habits and frameworks that work. And I love learning that from you on different calls, which one you're currently utilizing. But what is a framework or tool that you are using right now that's helping you to live your best public health life?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm using this right now, especially as we're seeing a lot of different upheavals that are happening in the public health space and in other spaces, obviously, as well. But this is an amalgamation of different readings and different evidence-based practices that I have learned about. So, for example, Byron Katie, the work, Naval Ravikant, A Guide to Wealth and Happiness, Shazad Shamin, positive intelligence. And to all of that, I also added an element that was just very much mine, which was, what am I really good at? Uh, so the issue that I think all of us are facing is that as we have different challenges, like in my case, for example, it could be I read a course evaluation and I fixated on one student's comment and was drowning out the 12 other voices of other students, and I was just hearing those very negative voices again and again. Or as I mentioned, I was really afraid to reach out to you or even propose this course because of all these fears, like who am I and all those things. Or perhaps I'm going to have a serious conversation with my grant colleagues about funding, and those are always difficult to have. And so those voices, like, what are you going to say? You don't want to say it. You want to postpone it. So how do you quiet those voices? So as
Mm.
Shazad Shamin says in Positive Intelligence, we can then tap into our inner sage, that creativity, that curiosity, that ability to plan and organize that we all inherently have. And especially your viewers, your readers, you and I are so brilliant in many aspects of the work that we do and we're so successful at it. Why not apply it to our own day-to-day life? So one of my gifts is that I ask good questions. And I said, well, what question could I ask myself when I'm kind of like drowning in all of this kind of saboteur mode to kind of get me out of it and re-tap into that creativity, that intuition, that joyfulness. And I realized that a question for me would be, if I didn't have this feeling, then what would I do? Seems like very simple, but it was very effective
Mm.
because one, first, I wanted to acknowledge the feeling itself because the feelings are important. If you're afraid, you want to make sure that that's like an
Yep.
alert, like, oh my gosh, you need to pay attention. If you're angry, you know that something about your security or your space is being impacted, and you also need to figure out how to push back. But once that emotion has passed and you have received that data, then it's time to move on and do something about it and not just kind of like drown. So I would ask myself that question, and immediately my rational brain would hypothetically think, oh, I would do this. And so I was like, oh,
Mm.
okay, that's the door. Let me step into that door and through that door and into this new space. And then I just moved on, whether it was like for the course evaluation, I'm just going to take a little bit of time and move on to the next couple of students. Or for reaching out to you, just send that email. It's very simple. It won't be perfect, but it'll be fine. So simple things like that, I think, have really helped me. And especially right now, as we're bombarded with a lot of different things, quieting those voices so we can move on to what really matters to us the most and how to do it the best is really important. So let me turn that question back to you. What tool are you using right now that is most helpful to you that you think our viewers, our readers may benefit from?
Oh yeah, I'd love to share, but I first want to reflect something back about your tool, which is it's really so great that you were able to create that amalgamation of the different evidence-based tools that you read and find something that works for you. And you said something, oh, it's simple. And it can be simple when you've practiced it or you've resourced yourself. But I want to say, actually, it can be okay to get help figuring out a tool, or even in the beginning when we're learning how to use a tool like that, have someone, it could be a colleague, a friend, a supervisor. But yes, we might have a therapist, a coach, more formal to help us build that muscle. And secondly, when we're in a deep amount of overwhelm or uncertainty, I would say, like if we're experiencing a lot of grief or we've had a layoff or something, to expect, because I'll do this to myself, girl, you are a trained social worker. Why can't you figure this out? There's that part of me. And it's like, but I could also get help. We have a community. That's also part of what the course is for, or us sharing tools like this now. And
And
I really
Shannon,
also, oh, go ahead.
yeah, no, I think you're right. Again, let me underline what you said about the muscle. I forgot about that, but you're absolutely right. We have this tool use it once, it's hard. Use it many times, it's super easy.
Yes.
And you're so right. So thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, and we all want to get those things in our toolkit that are easy for us. So when we have a crisis, they're ready. But it's like sometimes we're adapting and shifting our tools. Sometimes this tidal wave of things come and we do need help. And I also really appreciate that you're vulnerable enough to share something you're struggling with, like getting a course evaluation that didn't feel great. Like these things can just also be hard. It's part of leading, it's part of doing the work, it's part of being human.
Yeah.
Okay, so my tool is one I learned from you. So I'm just so happy to
Oh,
share it. Yes, because when we were working on, you have a great exercise you do with your mentees, part of which we integrated into the course was about tapping into what are unique gifts. And so this so happens also probably a month or so ago or so, we're in the deep experience of having a lot of things impact public health at this time. And like many people, I'm feeling overwhelmed. The exercise you did was discovering what our gifts are. And you wanted to do it with me. And I did think right away, like, I mean, are my gifts really important? Like, we got to just do the work right now. Like, we got to also just get the course done. Like, I was very much in work mode, but I was like, I really like Juan. Let me go on this gifts journey with him. So I did. And oh my gosh, Juan, it ends up being so powerful. I end up writing the gifts you helped me discover on a tag, and I've been keeping it on my desk. So I discover like my gifts unique to me are around connection, collaboration, imagination, and possibility, creating and building. And one of the things you do once you discover the gifts, which we help people work towards, is making a plan to implement it. And I was like, how much of my week is about this? I was very much in defending institutions mode, or getting my work done mode, or time blocking my calendar more. Also, I need to do those things, but I was like, wait a minute, I know that something that's unique, there's other people to analyze data, there's other people that can write this brief. Here's something that's unique to me. So I have now been making sure I put in every week, where's my connection and collaboration, where am I imagining, and how am I doing something creative? And I can even just feel in my body explaining it to you. I'm just much more alive. The world has not changed that much. It may have gotten worse, but I'm more alive in the way I engage in it. And so I feel really grateful to you for that.
thank you so much, Shannon. If it's okay with you, can I share just a snippet of what this activity is about? And then I want to ask you some questions about
Oh,
it.
yeah, for sure.
Sure. So again, for this specific tool, I drew from Naval Ravikant's A Guide to Wealth and Happiness, in which he described uh, how each of us has like these unique abilities, and that sometimes we don't acknowledge it ourselves, but sometimes our loved ones, especially when we were kids, can see that in us, perhaps a sibling or a best friend or your parents, and they're like, oh my gosh, you like love and devour books, or you're like amazing at the kitchen, or you're such a creative person. And sometimes those gifts are just an inherent part of who we are, our DNA. And if we let those flourish and we see them and we exalt them, then we bring joy in our everyday life. And then as we grow up, we also acquire other gifts, different ways of being. So what we do through this activity, just very briefly, is kind of tap into those different elements of your life when you were a child, when you were older, encompassing all of these, also asking advice from others around you if necessary, and then combining all this data together, analyzing it, and then synthesizing it into some key gifts that you want to identify for yourself and then ultimately use. So my question to you, Shannon, is like, now that you've identified these gifts, how do you use them? How do you make them your phrase I use a lot now is wonderful. Make the invisible visible. How do you make it visible? How do you apply it? How is your life different now that you use these gifts?
Yeah. So one is very analog, which I'm, have a digital calendar and things, but having this tag and it's lived at my desk. Sometimes it's been in my kitchen. And then
And sorry,
really
Shannon,
make,
for the readers out there, tell us what this analog thing, this tag.
oh yeah, because I'm holding up. Yeah, it's a paper luggage tag that says my gifts, connection, collaboration, imagination slash possibility, create slash build.
Love it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. And then I've been making sure on my digital calendar that I have something I'm creating this week. Sometimes it's for myself. Like I took a class at the community college this week about how to use the etching
Yeah.
press machine, which it was just like, oh, it's so good to learn. I made a piece of art, or is it a thing that I'm going to
Oh,
create that is for community or for the work that's happening right now? But I'm just making sure that that happens and saying, hey, no, this is part of my work. Using my gifts is part of my work.
I love that. Thank you, Shannon.
Hmm. Well, our time is coming to a close for this interview, anyways. And so I want to just have us each having one reflection as we sign off about how we're seeing the future of public health or how we imagine the future and the work that you and I are doing in it. So while you're having a little think about that, I'll just say, for me, we know that public health will exist, yet we don't yet know exactly what form it can be in. And that gives space for us to create and imagine. And for those of us who are called to do this work at whatever time in life, it can be a moment for us to commit and find that way that we can stay the course and shape shift with the needs that are happening, rebuild structures that need to be rebuilt, imagine new ways of doing things so that we can have that approach of caring for each other.
I love that, Shannon. Thank you. I think you said it really well. To what you said, I'll also add public health and social work uh, are all based on love and connection, and us having compassion for others, having compassion for ourselves, and making those bridges form. We've always had that in public health, and we will continue to have that. So public health and social work are work fields of joy, of love, of connection. And as we enter this new phase, we should hold tight to those ideals of togetherness as we kind of forge what this new public health what will look like in the days, weeks, and years to come.
Yeah, beautiful. I love it. So much possibility. Well, thank you. Thank you for sending the email. Thank you for quieting your imposter and reaching out to me because it's been personally for me such a joy. And thank you for doing this interview so that we can share more about the tools that we're using that might be helpful for other people in these times too.
I learned so much. I always learn so much from talking to you every single time, and this interview was the same. So thank you, Shannon, for the opportunity. This was amazing. Thank you so much.
Okay, take good care.
Bye, Shannon.
Bye.